Welcome to the Krinzman Property Playbook, your inside look at South Florida real estate. I'm your host, Matthew Krinzman, bringing you real strategies, real insights, and real connections that help you buy, sell, and invest with confidence. With over 2 decades of experience as a licensed realtor and broker associate, I've watched South Florida grow from a quiet getaway to a global destination, and I'm here to help you navigate it like a pro. My business thrives on trusted relationships, with many of my clients being repeat and referrals. This podcast is brought to you by me, Matthew Krinzman, a One Sotheby's International Realty agent. For more info, visit buysellmiamire.com. Let's dive in. Welcome everyone to the Krinzman Property Playbook. I am your host, Matthew Krinzman. I am the host of the show. I am also a licensed real estate broker associate here in South Florida with One Sotheby's International Realty. And today I have with me a guest, Eric Callis with Boardroom Media, right? Boardroom PR. Is that the correct?
Boardroom PR. Although I do have a media background that I'm sure we'll get into, but thank you for having.
We will. We were just catching up now on talking about football and start football season. So it's like our happy time. And hopefully we'll have some good stuff happening, at least on our local teams here in Miami this year. Well, the UN started off well, so let's see how the Dolphins go.
I'm a Hurricane class of 06, so
we get all right.
You're right where I itch with that reference.
Excellent. That was a great win on Saturday, last Sunday.
Relieved, very relieved.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. So Eric, let's get into it, man. So why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do, and we'll have a conversation.
Sure. So what I currently do, I'm senior vice president at Boardroom PR. We're a Fort Lauderdale-based integrated marketing agency, public relations and marketing. We do a lot more than just PR, even though my focus is on public relations. As a firm, we have an 8-member content team where they are doing incredible, sophisticated storytelling through social media, management and strategy, video production, graphic design, digital marketing. Boardroom has invested heavily over the last decade in kind of non-traditional PR and marketing services because our leadership anticipated that the game was really changing as far as media is concerned. And you have to be a lot more proactive in creating your own storytelling channels. So we went from one social media intern about a decade ago to an 8-member content team that continues to grow. And as far as our scope, we represent real estate clientele all throughout Florida and beyond, really. We have boots on the ground throughout Florida, but we represent clients all along the East Coast, in some cases, even in other parts of the U.S. and North America. Some of our Florida clients are very active in markets outside of Florida and the other way around. So we have a very diverse client base, which I'm sure we'll get into more. And as far as my professional background, just backing it up a bit. So as I mentioned, I'm a proud University of Miami Hurricane. I studied journalism, actually had some great experiences as the sports editor of the Miami Hurricane and as a broadcaster with WV. So we could do
You broadcasted? You were doing the games, or you had your own show on
both? I actually both. So I did some play-by-play, and then I had a weekly sports talk show that was just an absolute blast. Just incredible memories. And I was there for the final years of the Orange Bowl, some incredible teams, future NFL Hall of Famers. We could do an entire 3-hour podcast.
We could definitely talk about the Canes.
Some off-square stories, some Vince Wilfork, Kellen Winslow, Frank Gore. My freshman year was the 2002 disaster in the desert, the Ohio State robbery, where I arrived at school thinking that it was nothing but national titles. And then we had one stolen from us and have never sniffed one ever since. So maybe I was the problem. Then my younger sister following me to you 2 years after was...
It's all your fault.
We were the collective jinx coming from Massachusetts to you. So I graduated with a journalism degree and I spent 10 years in journalism. I quickly got into business journalism, starting off at Miami Today. Quite a departure from what I was doing in school, but it actually ended up being fortuitous that the fact that there were basically no sports journalism jobs available in 2006.
That'd be the new Dan Levitard for the Miami.
There's only one Dan Levitard. There's only one Greg Cody. It's a finite pool of talent, and the people who have those jobs don't tend to give them up easily. But it was fortuitous because I got out of the kind of traditional daily newspaper business,
And that's completely changed.
which
That
is
is,
completely
I don't even need a print. I don't, there's a print version. Most newspapers don't even do a print version anymore.
no. And actually, the publication I spent most of my journalism career at, Daily Business Review, I spent 6 years there.
Sure.
They, about a year ago, abandoned print
Digital.
altogether.
Yeah, they
and
go
now
digital.
it's just digital.
So I don't think the South Florida Business Journal, do they print actually
They,
also?
they have a weekly
Yeah.
print edition. Actually, it's a really nice, robust print edition that complements what they do
yeah.
on the web. But it's digital first, even
Right,
there.
sure. Everything's digital now.
So yeah, so 6 years at the Daily Business Review, and then my final journalism job, I was the South Florida bureau chief of The Real Deal. So that really,
that's right. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah,
that's how people in the industry know my name. That
yeah,
took me from
I do remember that. Yeah,
behind the computer to much more of a front facing. I really was involved in introducing original reporting to the Real Deal South Florida operation. At that point, they were really just active in New York and doing some aggregation and some events and started the print magazine there. So I was involved in introducing original reporting, building a reporting team. A few of the writers are still writers for them now, which I'm very proud of. We had our first, I say we still, even though we're talking 12 years ago, but we had our first South Florida forum when I was there, and it was at the Moore Building in the Design District. We were expecting 2,000 people. And you may remember this. We were expecting 2,000. We got over 4,000 people.
it was crowded. It was very crowded. Very
Some
hard to
people
walk around.
You couldn't park. People got turned away.
God, I remember that. Yeah.
I met Venus Williams that evening, which is probably the first thing that comes to mind, and had a great conversation with her. She was promoting her burgeoning interior design business and doing a lot of work with Terra Group and Related Group and some of the major
I
developers.
remember that. Yeah, I remember that.
Amazingly, she was still doing her thing at the U.S. Open.
Yeah, I saw that. I was watching one day and I'm like, oh my gosh, she's still there. I think about it, 20 something years that she's appeared.
Probably more than that. Goes
I
back
think maybe
to
25 at this point. I don't know, but that just ages me now at this point.
me as
maybe.
well.
Me a little bit more, but yeah.
So the Real Deal gave me an opportunity to be more than just a behind the desk journalist, but really more of a brand ambassador. I had to be very public facing. I would moderate panel discussions, MC events. I had to go out and really build industry relationships and spread the gospel of what the Real Deal was doing. It was a great experience, and it put me in a position to eventually make the transition into public relations, which I joined Boardroom PR 10 years ago. And I think if I hadn't had the Real Deal experience, I would not nearly have been as successful as I've been at Boardroom, focusing on mainly real estate clientele, real estate construction, development. I do also work with law firms, especially if they're active in real estate. It helps. A lot of synergy there.
In a lot of South Florida, there are a lot of real estate attorneys and firms that are solely specialized in the field of that. So you don't have a lack, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
Which is
There's
good
always
for
a
you.
real estate angle, as they say. Yeah, so 10 years here at Boardroom. Boardroom's been around for 35 years. We have an incredible team, and we get to work with some unbelievable clients, developers, brokers, investors, property managers, real estate attorneys, planners. It really runs the gamut. And no 2 days are the same in this job as you could say the same for your job as well.
100%. Every day is something new. I always make the joke, the day I don't learn something new or see something new in the business is the day I can finally retire and just walk away and sit on the couch and just relax. Yeah, this business definitely gives us something new every day, especially in South Florida in general.
But
Never something constant is going on.
Consider this. I started my kind of business journalism career in 2006. So it was really the tail end of the 2000s condo boom.
I remember that very well.
The tail end of the go-go days of newspapers, really, as I often say. And I moved over to the Daily Business Review as really a transactions-focused reporter in late 2007. So really just the final days of that boom. And about a year into the job, the entire economy and real estate market crashed. The Great Recession. And I went from being a transaction reporter to essentially being a bankruptcy and foreclosure reporter. I was going to the courtroom and covering real estate related and business bankruptcies and messy foreclosures. I don't think there was an actual transaction I reported on between late 2008 and probably 2010, 2011, when the relateds of the world were very smartly starting to tie up some of the Brickell sites that went through foreclosure that they were able to purchase for pennies. And those became the future sites of My Brickell and Brickell House. So that experience was quite something to start a journalism career when it's booming and everybody's building and everything's great, to everything's collapsed. Nobody's buying anything. Nobody's developing anything. People are in just tremendous financial distress. And then coming out of that to experience South Florida's incredibly fast recovery compared to the rest of the country and the world, where in 2011, you were starting to see development again. And I don't work with Related at all, so this is sounding very Related promotional, but they were really the
biggest. They're the biggest, and they're the gorilla. They're the 800-pound gorilla.
So they were the first mover. And I remember My Brickell. Do you remember that project, Matt? Yes. My Brickell was the kind of the first one of that 2010 cycle where they went lower rise than they typically would. They hired Fareed Rashid, the famous designer, to do the interiors. And that was the first kind of grand opening party that I remember attending, the first completed project of that cycle. And it sold incredibly well. And we're off to the races again.
Yeah, when the parties start coming back, things are starting to get better, especially the groundbreaking parties, and the champagne's flowing and the food is really good. I think the first one I went to was Echo Aventura. That was a PMG project, and they had bluefin tuna. So they were selling that. And I just stood there. I was like, I never had bluefin cut like that. You have tuna. Like, all right, this is bluefin. I had to look it up, and I think like each bite was $1,000. So I was like, I'm going to enjoy myself. But yeah, once the parties start coming back, business starting to get better, and you're right. The market, the blood in the streets wasn't quite there as they were predicting. There were a lot of doomers. I call them doomer gooners out there, and they're out there today as well. But you're saying, I didn't see it. There were some deals to be had. Look, there were deals. The way I survived it was by selling homes that were $50,000, $60,000 to investors. Yeah, you survived it. There's a saying, if you make your money on the buy, so those who were capable of making those buys then did very well for themselves. And maybe in a really relatively short period of time, if you were buying through 2008 to 2012, and you start selling them back on 2014 and on, or you kept them as rentals, you did very well. And there's always
just think about the Brickell condo development sites that traded for $7 million or $10 million.
And all the bankruptcies too. Don't forget, Icon Brickell was in bankruptcy. The bank took that back. There was 1040 or 1050 and 1060 Brickell, which is 2 towers. They went to bankruptcy as well. And there were deals we had. Look, you could buy condos at that time for $190,000, $100,000, $90,000. And I remember talking to people like, no, really? I'm like, this is your time. This is the time. You're never going to see this again. I should never say never, but
it's never say never.
I hopefully never see this again, to tell you the truth. But yeah, that was a time, and you got in at that time. You're like, look, like you said, I was like almost at the same time. It's like the death knell of the printed journalism and social media and the internet, web-based starts taking off. And now we're into AI, and it's hard to discern what's real or what's not real anymore with the advent of AI getting so good. And obviously social media being the biggest factor. If you're not on it, you're dead, basically. You're not known. My business, we went from quarters in my pocket to calling to find a payphone, and now sending by fax machine, and our MLS was DOS based at the time. Oh God, I'm really aging myself today. Now everything is internet based and everything is AI. We have AI backing up everything. So we've come very far in a very short period of time as far as technology goes. So how is the technology affecting the media business, your side of the promotion, PR side?
Dramatically. And we're only in the early infant stages of it, really.
Yes.
But
the Wild West part, for sure.
AI is already changing, not just public relations and communications. Every business should have an AI plan, or at least commit to educating yourselves and your people and having continuous conversations about AI. The first thing that any real estate related business, or any business in general, should be looking at are what efficiencies can we create through automation? It's not necessarily a eureka moment. It's first just looking at, we have these tools. What are the mundane tasks that we can on and start there? And there's a lot. I would think there's a lot for a real estate agent like yourself, whether it's research, brainstorming, maybe putting, at least getting offering memorandums and marketing decks to the 70-80% level. It's website copywriting. You look at the efficiencies that can be created first, and then you dive deeper into how is it going to change how we communicate? How is it going to change how news is reported, the credibility of information? How in my world, how is it changing what we're doing as publicists and social media? Our big challenge is really just continuing to protect our value proposition when it comes to the clients that we work with, and really making them understand that.
I think that same thing goes for real estate agents and those of us in the real estate sales side, being relevant. Relevancy is our biggest issue.
100%. It's very similar.
Just this for a segue, but everyone's talking about, AI is going to take our jobs. I disagree with that, because you still need a human factor involved. You still need someone. AI has not yet, and it may not, maybe it gets there. But again, AI is dependent on the input that we give it and what we put into it so AI would understand what we're doing. And that's the only way it grows, what we give it. And to say that the real estate agents may go away. We were talking about the AI being replacing. It's not happening. It may replace some of the redundancies and makes things more streamlined as far as maybe responding to emails, like helping with a social media deck, helping with the CMAs, putting those together, which, I mean, there are already worse things you could use for CMAs, things like that, to put a CMA together. Maybe it only helps improve it. But I think what I find it is like, it's able to research things that I make research a lot easier for me to do.
Research, ideation in general, brainstorming. That's probably the biggest way that I use it, is to just get a jump start on coming up with ideas. It's a launch pad for ideas. It helps organize thoughts. I have these client calls where I'm taking tons of notes. I'll type notes whenever possible. And it's just such great stuff. So I'll take my notes and throw it in it. And I use Gemini AI. A lot of my colleagues use ChatGPT. They swear by ChatGPT. And just organize those notes into more actionable ideas. Maybe if I'm going to take those notes and write some sort of an article on behalf of a client, give me an article outline, or even it's really just the organizing of thoughts, coming up with ideas. And it is a huge time saver that way. But the people that I talk to that really are in the weeds with this stuff, they say that AI is only about 10% of the way there. In terms of,
imagine that
if you're asking AI to just write an article or write a press release for you or write a listing proposal or a listing agreement, it's only like 10% of the quality and accuracy that it needs to be. So you're talking many years until it gets to that point where it's really threatening to replace us.
We get Skynet.
Exactly. So the human touch, it's where it's not going to replace the relationships. And I think that's but we're very transparent with our clients about AI, because we want to work hand in hand and be trusted advisors to them about how they should be utilizing AI, what's going to be happening. We position ourselves as thought leaders. As we're talking, our vice president who leads social media and our digital marketing director are just making their way back from the annual Inbound conference. This year was in San Francisco. It's hosted by HubSpot. They go there every year. Usually it's on the East Coast. I guess maybe the West Coasters were upset that they didn't get to have a home game and had to travel all the way to Boston post Labor Day, busy travel time. So this year was in San Fran. I'm sure a lot of incredibly bright people. It's basically a week-long conference in AI dominance, and it's all about the latest and greatest information of how marketing professionals are utilizing AI, what's coming, especially how it's changing search engine optimization and what we do on Google. It is already dramatically changing that. I can't wait for them to come back. Our whole team can't wait for them to come back, and they give internal presentations. We give presentations to clients. They put out blog posts, videos. instead of hiding behind AI and just trying to not acknowledge it, we're getting out in front of it and really trying to position ourselves as thought leaders. And it's making us utilize AI a lot better in our day-to-day work because we're embracing it, studying it, talking about it constantly, and just continuing the education process.
100%. Yeah. It's like when the internet became more in use and more popular, we're talking really from mid 90s. Then it hit the boom in the 2000, and you had the bust in the internet.com bust, but it was in its kind of its infancy. Companies like you see pets, like memory, like what was it, pets.com or things like that. They were ahead of the curve, but now it all works now. They were just ahead of their time. It didn't have it figured out, but given a couple extra, they would have had a couple more years. Pets.com would still be around. Like, look, the Uber, the deliveries companies like Puff and things like that. They were there in 1999 and 2000, 2001, and they just couldn't sustain because they just didn't have the backbone at that point still to make it work. Like you said, AI is in its infancy. It's like the Wild West. It's like the crypto market and the blockchain. The blockchain is maturing, but it's still a child at this point. It has not matured and AI has got a long way to go, but it's a great tool for those of us who are using it to help make things a little less complicated for ourselves, take some things off my plate that I can automate now, and I'm sure the same thing for you, it's a lot easier.
But it can't replicate your deep relationships, your market knowledge. In our case, it can't replace our strong media relationships, the credibility that we have with media, our own news judgment, storytelling abilities. It's a complementary tool, and that's how it has to be seen. I think the folks that we work with certainly get that. And that's the way it's going to go. It'll be a blending of automation and the human touch going forward.
100%. What are you seeing as far as your side of the business, as far as the real estate market? Obviously, you're like a little bit of a leading edge because PR ramps up when things are good. And I imagine it ramps down a little bit when they are not good. But though there's a theory in that when things are not that great, that's really when you should be pushing forward and maybe using more if you have the capital to capitalize on your projects and top big band at that point. A lot of people are retrenching. Maybe it's the time to expand. So what are you seeing on your side of business?
It's a great question because I think that is probably the common perception is that you play more offense when things are booming and your clients are much more active with developing and investing. But the reality is you have to be just as aggressive in prioritizing PR communications in flat or down markets as you do in boom times. And a great example, in my 10 years at Boardroom, I think the best work that we collectively did was in the first 45 to 60 days of COVID, where everything shut down. Everyone all of a sudden had to go home. Everybody was freaking out because of the uncertainty of it. And I acknowledged basically a week before that, like first week of March, that everything's about to change. Our clients are really going to need us. They're going to need us in different ways. And so we really stepped up where we were just constantly communicating with clients every day to find out what their needs were. And a lot of what we were doing is handling internal communications to stakeholders. If they were property owners, communicating to tenants, like commercial tenants. There was so much uncertainty that just staying engaged with the people that you're accountable to was so important. So we were doing a lot more behind the scenes communications and consulting. And at the same time, we also were convincing our clients that, look, this is a thought leadership opportunity. These reporters are going to be desperately looking for content. We all understand that nobody's going to have the answers on March 15th about what's going to happen March 15, 2020, about what's going to happen with the pandemic. This is an opportunity to keep your name out there and be relevant with thought leadership, just talking through what you're experiencing. And so we did a fantastic job keeping our clients out there as expert sources and thought leaders in the local market with national media, doing a lot of TV. That was the advent of the Zoom interviews. And a lot of our loyal clients were cleaning up on all kinds of Zoom interviews because the amount of TV pieces about just like remote working and employment issues that could come up and liability. There was just There was a lot to talk about. Even if we didn't have the answers, there's a lot to talk about. So that I always call back to that, and nothing was going on in terms of activity, but we really did our best work. A lot of it was behind the scenes. And this year, 2025, has certainly been more of a grind than the 2021 boom, 2022. Really, the last couple of years, it's been more of a steady market. And then I feel like this year been fairly, I don't want to say quiet, but it's been more of a probably normal pre-2020 type market where there's still activity, but it's not, developers are not racing to get projects out of the ground or projects launched. People are not necessarily buying or selling homes unless they really need to move forward with it. So from that standpoint, it's been a little quieter, but that's where you have to stay relevant and stay visible in other ways. If you don't have a lot going on, if you don't have a lot of your own news, you still have to be out there and be part of the conversation because you need to position yourself for when things really pick up. There's also the other part of it is there's a national narrative. And I'm sure you've seen this, Matt, where the national media probably got so sick of reporting about how Florida was just booming during the pandemic that they're painting Florida with this broad brush now and putting up stories about how allegedly the Florida's housing market is collapsing, free fall, inventory surging, prices cut. What they're doing is they're not separating South Florida, which is really its own animal, from these kind of maybe secondary, tertiary pockets of the state that maybe they had a run up, an unsustainable run up during COVID. And they're just putting those provocative headlines out there because they were sick of all the positive press that we were getting. So the reality is, and this is something I'll be curious to hear or if your brokerage is reporting the same thing. So one of the brokerages, one of my longtime brokerage clients, which I won't name them because they're not One Sotheby's, although we've had the pleasure of working with One Sotheby's on many developments that they've handled sales on, but
some good ones.
This prominent brokerage, largest independent brokerage in the state of Florida. So they have a lot of data, a lot of helpful data to guide what's going on in the market. In July, they had their third best month in terms of pending sales volume throughout their entire platform, throughout their entire footprint, which covers everything from the Keys through the Tri-County area, Treasure Coast, and some of Southwest Florida as well, in their 99-year history. Their third best month of pending sales in July, when the narrative out there is that summertime, it's been a slow market, but that's pending sales that are going to be closing probably this month and next. So I'm curious, Matt, if your brokerage is tracking the same kind of pending sales activity, because that to me is a sign that sellers are getting comfortable with still taking a profit, just not a tax profit like they did during the pandemic boom. And buyers are moving forward. Life is going on, essentially.
Life goes on. That's true. Look, it's Sotheby's. We track what's going on. We, as a general, the company kind of operates in more of a higher end, the luxury end, which is doing well. Because I hear plenty of times, like if we had more homes that were or condos that were 10 million plus, we'd sell them all, no problem. Which is probably true at some level, because those people who have money, and there is the influx of money to Florida in general. There's been billions of dollars that have been lost from others that have come from other states that they lost. That's come into Florida, and they're not interest rate sensitive necessarily, because they can either write the check or go get the loan and fine, whatever it is, I'll pay it. So there is a demand on the luxury side where I see some headwinds and slowdown is anything really below 2 million, to tell you the truth. And it's funny to say that's like the starter home process, $1 million starter home, which is not, it wasn't, but now it is because prices have gone up and the values have gone up over the years, last few years especially. But when you're financing a loan at 6.5 or maybe even close to 7, what it got to at some point, very expensive. Florida, let's not kid ourselves. South Florida is an expensive place now because of the real estate. And we have other issues. We have taxes, we have insurance. Maybe we get some kind of reprieve with the property taxes. The governor hopes to get, but I think there's going to be a little bit of it's a great idea. I love the idea. It was proposed by Marco Rubio back in 2010, I think, when he was Speaker of the House, State House. He did propose it, but didn't go anywhere. The governor tried to get it this year through the legislature. They weren't having it, so he's going to try to make a constitutional amendment. I'd like to see how he makes up the difference with not having property taxes, but I think that could help, especially on the investor side.
If you don't have property taxes or income taxes, though, how is anything that we need going to get paid for? I guess
That's the part I'd like to see how that gets fixed. The state does bring in other taxes, obviously, through sales tax, resort taxes, things like that, excise taxes that we have. So there are taxes that are being paid to the state on a daily basis. The question is, how do the municipalities make up the difference? So that I wait to see. Look, it's a great idea. I love, look, anytime you propose an idea to eliminate taxes or reduce my taxes, I'm 100% for. There has to be a plan how you do it. Anyway, but getting back to the market itself, anything under $1 million is tougher to sell. The condo market is tougher because we have all the new rules that came into place after Surfside. Those are assessments, taxes, again, insurance issues for these condominiums, especially the associations, is another issue. But I think there's some positivity coming on the horizon where the buildings are getting through their assessment, making the improvements they need to do, and now more insurance, and they get helps their insurance rates come down because they can get re-rated and say, oh, you did all the work, you made the improvements, we can re-rate you. And now there are more insurance companies coming into the market. So there are some good things happening. Like we talked about, the doom and gloom always gets to the press, right? It gets the headline. And I mentioned it earlier, I call these the doom or glooners. You can go on YouTube, go on social media, you'll say, oh, the market's falling apart. They take it, like you said, a small segment of the market. It could be the Cape Coral market. It could be the Fort Charlotte market, the Fort Myers, or other Fort St. Lucie areas, Martin County, where they have a lot, that's built a lot, and now they're trying to absorb it. But those are tertiary areas. Obviously, South Florida is one of the businesses. So we would be the first to come back. Things come down, like it happened in 2008. Miami Beach, if anyone was tracking, when I was working for the company I was working for, and I'm sure you know those guys, remember at Evolution. We were tracking we were tracking buildings, especially south of Fifth. You could see, okay, there was a dip. But then 2010, you start seeing the angle going up, the line starting to trend up again. It meant there's always a demand, and there's people out there who have money, especially anything oceanfront, waterfront, always sells. The luxury market, that's what you want to be on, right? You look at the prices now. I think someone in my office has acted on something to continue on in the Miami Beach office. I think they sold it for, I don't know, it was 10 million, or 11 million. And then the person who bought it put it back on the market for 15 million within a few months and sold.
This is continuum on South of Fifth.
At South of Fifth.
That's like a 20-year-old building, isn't it?
20-year-old building now, but still it's considered the height of luxury for that area. Because you look South of Fifth, a great neighborhood.
Oh, I love South of Fifth.
Both towers are still considered to be two of the best buildings in South Florida. Let's give an example. The luxury market is still doing well. Maybe it takes a little bit longer to sell, but there are people there with money. People are still coming to Florida, and we'll see what happens in New York in the next month or two. What's going to happen there? People say politics makes a big difference. Who's in charge in whatever state or whatever city? Florida, they're going to come to Florida because they feel Florida is being an open state and a little bit more economic freedom. That's for sure. Do what we need to do.
The hardy New Yorkers, the real hardcore lifers in New York, very dismissive of the Mondani effect and all the media hype that's been. But what I would tell them is what happened during COVID when Florida opened everything up and New York was forcing people to have dinner outside in bubbles.
Not even that.
It's real life bubble boys.
For a lot of times. Remember, they had these restrictions, like you couldn't be X amount of feet away from home unless you're walking your dog. They already relocated to Florida, so there's already proof. Schools were closed, kids were at home. I'm not sure we can get into a whole the psychological and the sociological ramifications of all that, but they came here in droves. People took their businesses if they could, especially if they're in the financial market. Very easy to move. As long as you have a really good internet connection, you can trade, you can do your hedge funds, you can do financial services anywhere in the country. They all came to South Florida because they were able to live their lives. And you saw the influx. People let's not kid ourselves, some people have left, go back to New York because there was a demand. There were companies demanded them back. But for the most part, they're here still. And you especially see it in the private school section. The kids, how the private schools have no space. Public schools have space, but the private schools have no space.
And there's this new generation, especially if you get into the northern Palm Beaches, this new generation of kind of New York wealthy entrepreneurial types in their 35 to 45 range that have now planted their flag in the northern Palm Beaches and have created a next generation of Jupiter and golf course country club owners there. And even some of them, it's funny to call them entry level luxury buyers. Some of them
there is entry level.
Some of them are actually going to Port St. Lucie, that area, some of the higher end golf course communities where the get in is more 1 to 2 million, and getting down here that way. And they're still actively working. They have families, young children. So that's definitely a trend that the luxury agents that we work with up in the Palm Beaches and the Treasure Coast tell us about. So for the skeptics, I'm certainly not someone who thinks New York is ever going to die out, or New York is going to continue to be the epicenter of the global economy. New York, London, they're sacrosanct as far as that's concerned. But
100%.
In terms of being dismissive of, if this guy becomes the mayor and starts implementing the policies that he's threatened to implement, that even just the specter of those policies are going to drive wealthy people from New York here again and have them investing here. And this is real. I talk to commercial real estate brokers that are really having these conversations with New York clients where they're already asking questions, trying to get things in motion under the assumption that, that he is going to win. And we'll see what happens now with Cuomo.
There's still time left on the clock, to use a sports metaphor, but we'll see what happens. Look, like you said, COVID, people came here, and you could see the numbers. Well, that's left New York, left the Northeast, left California over the 5 years, and has come to other states. But Florida is definitely one of the biggest beneficiaries, maybe not the biggest of it all. And you can tell the governor of those states could tell us everything is great, but they can see it in their coffers, how much they're collecting and how much the taxes they're collecting on the personal income taxes that they're charging, that they charge to their residents. Now, it's very easy to become a resident and a homestead your home here in the state of Florida. 6 months, was it 6 months, 1 day or something like that? Or 20, it's like a certain amount of months you have to be here. It's 6 months. And now it's my homestead. I live here. You can't tax me. I'm done.
I love my home state. I love my home state of Massachusetts. I'm a proud Bostonian. I'm still hardcore about the Boston sports team. So I don't really watch baseball anymore, sadly, because that was my first love. I love the city of Boston. I was just there around July. There's nothing better. But that being said, I could not fathom owning property, living, raising a family in Massachusetts with the way that they tax you every which way. And just everything is so expensive there. And you're paying insane amounts of money for homes that are hundreds of years old with all kinds of infrastructure concerns. And every winter you have to sweat out whether your pipes are just going to completely freeze. It's just there's not, as much as I love being home, and I still have it's still home to me despite living down here for 23 years and now raising a family, putting down roots here. Yeah. As much family and friends as I have there, I could not fathom living there after spending my entire adult life in Florida and not having an income tax and having affordable, relatively real estate, depending on where you're buying, and reasonable cost of living. And there's no going back to that. It's just unfathomable to me that people accept.
They accept it because they're used to, I guess, it's like, they get used to it. There's a drip, like my faucet's dripping. Eventually, I'll get to it, but eventually you just block it out. And faucet's still dripping years later. It's now beyond repair. So things like that happen. I think those get used to it, unfortunately. But look, Florida is a great place. There's some great, you don't have to live in South Florida. There's great other parts of the state. You mentioned Port St. Lucie. I have friends who moved up there in the last few years, and they very happy living.
They're having a boom. They're really having a moment. We have one of my longtime commercial investor and developer clients has been very active there. They developed multiple retail centers there. They're about to acquire a large industrial facility. Development of tradition has just created such a residential stock and so much population growth that the demand for complementary commercial real estate is off the charts. And I think a lot of Palm Beach County families that maybe were priced out or felt like they were priced out during COVID maybe they cashed out on their homes there and then moved up a little bit north to St. Lucie and
100%.
were able to buy in still at a very reasonable price compared to what the values are growing to now. So that's definitely an area to watch. And I would say the Treasure Coast has almost become an extension of the Tri-County area where you may...
Yeah, and you can see some really good development going up there, like 12 Melbourne and the Space Coast as well, because there's a lot of good companies and technology coming into the Space Coast. So there's a lot of good things in the state. You don't have to live in South Florida. There's many good parts of the state. You can live in the Panhandle, the 30A area. The Panhandle is one of the most beautiful areas in the state, and some beautiful real estate. Got the West Coast of the state.
Tampa, Orlando's like just, it's overwhelming how much construction.
It's really the place that's really boomed in the last 10 years, I think.
It's too much for me.
But it's like living here. The whole state's booming. That's a good thing for you. That's a good thing for me. So it's any cool projects coming up that you guys are working on. Oh, this is a project.
Yeah, that's there's a number of them. So we have outside, I'll give you one way outside of South Florida that our two longtime clients of ours have partnered on for a couple of years now, but Beach Walk, just outside of Jacksonville, part of the Jacksonville MSA in St. Johns County. So Falcone Group Group was really like the master developer there. Yeah, the Miami World Center, of course, among many other projects. So they, in the last couple of years, have put together this master plan for Beach Walk and brought in another client of mine, Peb Enterprises, to jointly develop multiple retail projects. And they're developing multifamily, a Margaritaville hotel.
Oh, yeah.
A number of waterfront restaurants. There's Crystal Lagoon there, which has become a popular kind of amenity at different large scale developments. And they really targeted that area because the whole Jacksonville MSA has just been booming. We talk about
it's a big space. It's a huge space. Jacksonville's the biggest city as far as land and area because it's the whole county, basically. Yeah, there's definitely room for them to grow. And they're right on the border with Georgia. So
exactly.
Spot. And yeah, there's some good industries in the financial.
A lot of fundamentals there to tap into. And then staying on the subject of Peb Enterprises, so a project locally in the Tri-County area that we're very excited about. We've been heavily involved in managing the PR because it naturally gets a lot of media interest and there's multiple parties involved. So Peb and BH Group, they partner on a lot of stuff. They are partnering on the redevelopment of the former Office Depot headquarters in Boca Raton. In Boca, which exactly. And the Broken Sound Country Club. Yeah. So Peb and BH in 2023 acquired the headquarters, and then they brought in Related to partner on the development of 500 luxury apartment rentals there, which is they just closed. They a few months back closed the site acquisition for that, and that project's going to be moving forward soon. So what they did is they worked out a new long-term lease with Office Depot's parent company to keep them headquartered in Boca Raton, keep a lot of jobs, and keep them occupying about a third of the 600,000 some odd square feet of office space, which was very important to the city, obviously, to keep them there. And then they're eliminating one of the 3 office towers, doing very significant capital improvements to those office towers. And they have already had a lot of momentum leasing up some of the existing office space to companies like N8 Energy, Atlantic Pacific, who I'm sure you know those guys well. A law firm, a pretty big PI national law firm, just did a big lease there. So they've gotten a lot of office leasing momentum. They're close on finalizing a lease expansion that I believe will bring the office space to 97%. They've worked out a lease for a brand new Equinox gym there. And they'll have some restaurant out parcels, some retail out parcels. That is a transformative project that Boca has already been experiencing a lot of growth and a lot of activity. That's going to create a singular town center in that part of Boca Raton where you'll have everything in one place. It's the perfect site for it. A lot of employment, a lot of jobs, apartments for the people working there to live in, some restaurants. We know the Equinox will be popular. Equinox has been spreading just like crazy throughout South Florida and beyond. People love their Equinox and their luxury gyms, luxury concepts. I could certainly stand to get myself to one of those more often.
Me too. My doctor would tell me that as well.
So I do have you one outside of South Florida and one within South Florida that's really going to be transformative. And then we work with a lot of traditional luxury condo developments or mixed use projects that are maybe of a smaller scale than what I'm talking about. Tons of experience with luxury high rise condo development. And we're working on some of those and continue working on some of those.
Any of those that you're working?
So to just give you a few off the top of my head. So one that's actually not a high rise that we love is Salado in Pompano Beach.
Oh yeah.
Which that's actually contrarian in the market because it's a very exclusive. There's only 40 units. It's a 10-story project. So with these incredible outdoor terraces, it's just steps away from the beach.
Right. Yeah. The road is just right in front of it. And the sand is right there. I know.
And Pompano is another one. Yeah. Pompano is another one of these cities that when I first got to South Florida, and really for the first 15, 20 years that I was in South Florida, it was a sleepy beach town. The Canadians loved it.
It was Hollywood, just like Hollywood where I.
Exactly. Canadians loved it, but they had to be Canadians that really knew South Florida well.
Yeah.
You had the Briney's pub, you had the beach, you had, I think, the pier before it was really upgraded and renovated. And now there are over 20 developments. And I think, I'm just giving you the stat off the top of my head, but I think it's over $2 billion in public and private development activity in Pompano.
Downtown area. And I know they're trying to redevelop. They have a project to redevelop the downtown and beachfront. There is some great luxury buildings that have come in. The Ritz, the Waldorf.
Waldorf, the Ritz, yeah.
It has done a couple of others, Dolmar and forget the other name. And then there's up the street in Hillsborough Beach, you got Rosewood, which is not far, just hop, skip, and a jump away. And yeah, so Pompano Beach is one of those that are the city that is definitely, I think, experiencing a good upside.
And then I'll tell you, a few of my colleagues are working on some projects in Hallandale Beach. Seven Park is one.
Yeah, I got the presentation. It's a nice little project.
I am impressed by the depth of your market knowledge, encyclopedic market knowledge. I would say.
We had a presentation on Seven Park, and it's actually a nice little project that they're doing there.
So that's one. The Mondrian, which is going to be a conversion
with Pearl.
Yeah. Yep, Ari Pearl. So we're working on those two projects in Hallandale, and Hallandale's a very similar story where their boom started a little bit earlier than Pompano. We actually had done some work with the Atlantic Village project about 4 or so years ago, where they really brought some nice
office space.
Class A office, some nice restaurants, some kind of sporting facilities there. And that section of Hallandale was really kickstarted by that project. And it's just continued on. And now the stats are very similar to Pompano in terms of the volume of development activity there.
They have Shell Bay, which is, when we're talking about golf course communities, Shell Bay is the golf course community, at least in South Florida, before you get to Jupiter, or do a couple other. Jupiter has some great places, but Shell Bay, they've done tremendous. It's $1 million to get the golf club there. And I don't think they have anything left at this point. The only way you could get in is if you buy a unit in the Shell Bay or Burge branded building. It's the only way you'll be able to get a golf membership or a social membership at this point. So they've done tremendous. Tom Brady, I know, is actually I think he's a member. There's some really huge members there. And that's a great place for people who want to, maybe they're looking for a different way of life or different, ratchet it down, but that's a good place to make deals because there are going to be some people with big money hanging around, people looking for the next project. Shell Bay is a great place for it.
And then just to throw in a few Miami projects, just so we don't get pigeonholed, because even though we're headquartered in Fort Lauderdale, we're just as active in Miami as we are in other markets. One of my longtime clients, and I love working with them, the Astor companies. We worked with them through the sellout of Merrick Manor, Coral Gables. And what they've been focusing on is they have an enclave brand where they're doing rentals in Little Havana, which another pocket of Miami that, has really become an extension of West Brickell, where
I think people, whoever is listening to this, Little Havana, although they're trying to name it West Brickell, but let's keep it Little Havana, I think probably represents the great opportunity, the best opportunity for people to get in, developers, investors, get into a spot, a market that is next to downtown Miami, next to Brickell, close to the airport, close to the port, close to access to everything the river. There is so much opportunity there. I believe. Always been a huge fan of Little Havana, and I hope, I didn't want to cut you off, but I just want to put my own excitement
No, it's,
as well.
I used to live in Little Havana back in the 2000s, a lot quieter there. When I lived in Brickell, the Marlins Park opening up and things starting to pick up. But Astor has been active in Little Havana for probably 15 or so years. They did the in-town project, the 2-tower project that they ended up selling to an institutional, a multifamily investor. They did Brickell Vista, which was like a boutique condo building.
And I remember when they got built. And they were selling it for like $200,000 a door. And that was cheap real estate, to be honest. That was really cheap real estate to be right in the heart of Little Havana, that brand new condominium, and great access again to, if you live and work, close to downtown or Brickell, it's a great access point to be in. Plus at an affordable price.
100%. So these Enclave branded projects, so Douglas Enclave was the first that they completed. And that building now is nearly fully leased and occupied, but it included an allocation of below market rents, workforce housing, not
big now.
I hesitate because I don't think it was like formalized, subsidized housing, but he did allocate in cooperation with the city a certain percentage of units that met the AMI threshold. And even the market rate product was still very attainably priced compared to what else existed in the market. So they just began construction on Havana Enclave, which is also in Little Havana. That one's going to be pure market rate. And then he's got a site tied down that'll be likely a 2-tower project, also branded as Enclave, that will bring some more rental inventory to that area. So that's one client that's very bullish on Little Havana, and it sounds like you share their enthusiasm.
I want to hear it.
So there's more, some new development to meet the demand for multifamily product, and multifamily product that can be at a value, because as we know, one of Miami's biggest issues is housing affordability. We need rental housing that our typical employees can actually afford to live in. So this particular developer is very passionate about meeting that need. So that gives you a good.
I'm already.
Not everything has to be multi-million-dollar luxury.
I think they also did. I want to say they did a condo building on Coral Way back in
Nordica.
Which one?
It was called Nordica.
Nordica. But did they do it? I thought they did another one. Either way, I know who they are, and they have the pulse. I think they're doing the right thing. So you can pass that along to them the next time you talk to them and say,
For sure. I'll encourage them to tune in.
One Sotheby's who's really happy with what you're doing, and is also an advocate.
And the other thing that's worth noting is that we're seeing our clients and then other developers, they're continuing to close on incredibly large construction loans for these projects. So the capital markets remain incredibly bullish on South Florida. And yes, a lot of it's luxury, but some of it isn't. And it's still getting funding from, in some cases, the biggest banks in the world, and in other cases, private lenders. But these are large loans that are consistently closing. So that tells you a lot about the health of our market and how the money actually feels about our market versus any sort of sensationalistic media headlines.
So let's wrap it up. Let's give me Eric House's general overview, 10,000 foot looking down on the area and saying, all right, this is what you see hopefully happening or continuing to go on, say the next year, or even try to project, because you guys, your company will know who's doing what's happening. So you'll be on the leading edge of that. Just wrap that up for us.
So I would say that the stat I gave you earlier about pending sales tells me that we are going to see a major uptick in closed residential transactions in South Florida in the coming months. And I think over the rest, the rates are already starting to come down. And if we get the Federal Reserve rate cuts that we're anticipating getting, I think it's going to stimulate some more activity.
Oh, I think it will help. There's a psychological barrier that will be broken.
It's all as residential in particular is very psychologically looking. I think so that's definitely, I'm bullish about residential over the rest of the year. The question is going to be, will that continue into 2026? Is this going to be short-lived, or is it sustainable in terms of a this uptick in activity? Are we really just going to have a short-term cycle of people that have been waiting to move forward with home sales or home purchases? Or is it something that everyone's just now moving forward? The market is, we're back to 2019. Things are normal again. I will say, if I'm giving you one positive indicator, I will give you one not so positive indicator to look out for. And anybody who follows South Florida Business or all these other outlets are seeing this, but there's been a lot of small business bankruptcies picking up.
Yeah.
Chapter 11, Chapter 7. It's mostly food and beverage, a lot of restaurants, but also small businesses. And you are seeing real estate bankruptcies. Sometimes those are strategic, where there's a contested foreclosure and the bankruptcy's filed to basically stall the foreclosure. You see a lot of that. But that is a concerning macroeconomic and regional economic trend, because, that obviously affects the liquidity. And if people's businesses are closing, then that certainly has a ripple effect in real estate. So that's something that bears watching, maybe on the not so positive side. When there's bankruptcies and foreclosures with good real estate involved, that real estate will change hands, and there'll be some opportunities for some investors that have really been waiting for distress. Think about, we were hearing in 2022, 2023, of these funds that were being launched just to snap up distressed real estate, because the thinking was you had all this maturing debt, and a lot of the 2021 debt that was obtained was going to mature and people were going to be in distress. That really didn't happen to any great scale. So there could be some shaking out there, which in the long run could be a good thing, because it could lead to some sites being acquired at low basis and the right groups coming in and moving forward with projects or with good business plans to really activate those properties and breathe new life to them. I want to see that happen with Lincoln Road, for instance. Like, Lincoln Road is at a nadir right now, where you've had some high profile foreclosures and some properties change hands.
Purchased it also, the H&M building. What's his name? Robert Ravini, who has been buying up a lot of, at least up in the South Beach area, probably 5 years. That just transacted, I think, for $37 million. So you get the right people in the place and with a vision, you could turn around Lincoln Road. I think it's been done before. It'll be done again. I spent a lot of time on Lincoln Road for many years of my business, my career. And I saw it as a kid when you didn't want to walk there. And then it got better when the South Beach boom came and redevelopment and gentrification came. And then maybe got a little bit over gentrified at that point. And now I think you'll see people with the right vision come back in and to bring it back to, I think, where it should be a showplace and a crown jewel for the city of Miami. I think Miami Beach has some very important real estate players. And
I'm paying a lot of attention to Lincoln Road in 2026, because I think it's going to be a pivotal year. I think that the players that know the area very well know what needs to be done. 2026, the Ravanis and other investors coming in and taking over some of these prime properties. 2026 is when we'll start seeing what kind of new tenants they're bringing in, what those business plans are, and what the cities are going to, or what the city is going to do. Because as we know, the city of Miami Beach has implemented policies that have really changed the tenor of the city. Some people may say for better, some people may say for worse. Not for me to say, but Lincoln Road has certainly fallen a bit by the wayside, but there's potential for it to come back to its glory days.
I think
I'm a big fan of North Beach. I spend probably more time in North Beach. I know they're booming. I love the band shell. That's my favorite small entertainment venue. I love the Fillmore too, but in terms of just being a mini amphitheater that's open air, it's hard to beat. And there's a lot of great. Yeah, I'm not really spending a lot of time there in the summer months, but in the balance of the year, because there's some great restaurants and great bars that people don't even know about.
Yeah.
It's great for somebody like me who lives in Broward. I love doing like a staycation. If there's a concert I want to see there, do a little staycation, drop the kids in the Gables where my in-laws live, and me and the wife enjoy acting like we're tourists in Miami Beach, despite it being a half hour away from where we live. So there's a lot to shake out in the year ahead, but you can see the pockets of opportunity.
There always is. All right, Eric, how do people find you if they want to?
So you can find me.
Just doing a Google, asking ChatGPT, find me Eric Al.
You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm probably most active there. On Twitter or X, which I refuse to call it X, I'm Eric_Kalis. If you want to find me there, boardroompr.com. We're very visible on social media. We're not hard to find. And keep us in mind if you need public relations, marketing, social media. We do it all, and we do it for all kinds of real estate clients. And I would say we're more active in real estate than really any other vertical business.
That's your guy. Yeah, that's at least what I know the company for. And that's what I know you for as well. It's real estate related. So anyway, again, Eric, thanks for joining me, and those of us who are listening today to the Krinzman Property Playbook podcast. And whoever is watching or listening, hit subscribe, give us a follow, leave a comment. We'd like to hear from those who are watching or listening. It'd be great for us to know what people. Thanks for having us.
That's it for today's episode of the Krinzman Property Playbook. I hope you've gained some valuable insights and feel inspired to take your next steps in the real estate game. If you're ready to make a move or need expert guidance, let's connect. Whether you're buying, selling, or looking to invest, I'm here to help you navigate the South Florida market with confidence. You can reach out to me directly through my website or on social media. Let's get the conversation started and make your real estate goals a reality. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time on the Krinzman Property Playbook.